Hello, everybody. Welcome to Art Jam. My name's Josh Herman. Welcome to the Gnomon stream, Gnomon channel. This stream, just so you know, is sponsored by Lenovo, so you can see there's a sponsorship up there. They make this and many of our other streams possible. This one, Creature Corner, Archetype, and all of our big Lenovo events as well are sponsored by Lenovo. I'm going to be sculpting in ZBrush today. If you've never been to the stream, I'm basically be making stuff for a couple hours. I'm going to be continuing the project that I was working on a couple weeks ago, or I guess last week. Time is an abstract concept now, so I'm going to be continuing on that. I'll show you what I got here in a second. Here we go. So this is the head that I actually was sculpting on, and I used a 3D scan store head base mesh, and then I added a bunch of their what are they? Their displacement maps to get some nice texture on there. And today we're going to push this a little bit further. You can see that some of the sculpt itself is still a little bit of a lower res, I guess you could call it. So we're going to push this as far as we can today. And yeah, we're going to keep working on it. Hope everybody's doing well. My music is so quiet because it's not playing. Let me know if the music is too loud or if it's too quiet or if anything's going on there. Happy to fix it. And also happy to answer questions if you have them while I'm working. Get my pen tablet set up. All right. Oh, that's weird. What is this? Why is it making that? Did I draw it? First time attending a Gnomon live stream. Weird how there's a little audience. Yeah, the beginning of the streams we just started. The beginnings are usually pretty quiet. We don't get a ton of people in here usually, but sometimes we do. Oh, it's because when I'm holding down Alt, I'm just going to turn that off. Let's just fill this with a color too. Just fill it with white color, fill. I just don't like how much of a shadow that's creating. Hello there. Welcome back to the stream. Hope everybody's doing good. Can kind of pull some of this around. It's a bit of a harsh plane right here on the edge of that eye, so I'm going to try to work with that a little bit. My any Web3 projects or blockchain design, I don't necessarily do any of that. I've never really got into the blockchain stuff, aside from investments, but not from the NFT side. Just gonna fill this out so it feels a little bit more natural. There we go. Just feels like a little bit better just to show you what it was before I'll load it so we have it. I like loading these up anyways. So you can kind of see how harsh that line was in the face. Botox filters. Yeah, definitely like you can see like it's like leathery skin sort of, but harsh plane changes. So today we're going to try to make it feel a little bit more natural in what it should be. Some of that is just going to be chiseling some of these planes and making them feel a little bit softer and or adding reasons as to why they would be so different, like harsh. I'll probably also sculpt a lot with symmetry off today. So this is mostly going to be a pretty chill, just detailing stream today. A lot of the stuff I often will do doesn't really like with these types of sculpts, like when you're getting into doing details and like refining certain lines and stuff like that. Sometimes when you're sculpting, it looks like you're doing almost nothing, like it's just barely touching the surface. Um, but then like you go back and forth from a previous one, and you're like, oh, that was actually a lot of work that you did. Favorite character from the Star Trek franchise? Are we saying character or captain? Because that's two separate things. I'm assuming you're saying character. Um, I was like Captain Kirk. I was watching Star Trek Discovery, and I kind of really liked Captain Pike, though. See if I can make this feel a little bit more natural. Oh, of design. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Star Trek doesn't. I mean, the newer Klingons are pretty cool, like especially the Torchbringer suit and all that stuff that Neville had designed. Um, Star Trek for me was always one of the ones that didn't really push alien designs too far because it was always more of a TV. It's obviously a TV show, except for some of the movies, and they didn't push the designs very far because the budget was limited. So it's hard to say like which one had the best design for me. The Borgs were cool. I mean, I think the Borgs are pretty iconic, but I can't necessarily think of like one or the other. I also wasn't a huge Star Trek fan as compared to Star Wars or other sci-fi stuff. So I'm just going to pick at some of these little areas. The displacement maps that I used give you like a really kind of nice starting point for a lot of this stuff. And to try to avoid that Botox vibe, what you can do is kind of come in here. I'll just turn off these eyelashes and stuff. Um, and just pick at these little individual bumps because that makes it feel like it's not like really taut leather across like a surface. I'll show you what it kind of does in a second though. A movie that is interesting alien designs is Valerian. I've watched Valerian a ton of times actually. I think Luc Besson has really great a eye for visual style and language. So this is before, or sorry, this is after, and this is hide all this stuff before, so you can kind of see just a little bit of the texture level that we're going for, and how just kind of sculpting in some of these little areas. It is tedious to do it by hand, but it doesn't take that long. Will feel a little bit more natural. Being said, I don't want it to be like nothing. Yeah, watch Fifth Element countless times, right? Yeah, Fifth Element's incredible. Uh, I wouldn't say it's underrated because tons of people seem to, you know, like and respect the movie. Um, but it's definitely one for me that was a big movie that I've watched hundreds of times. It's just so cool. The characters are cool. The design's cool. The world that he built is really fascinating. I was doing before some little lines, some sort of design line. You like the Valerian Will, but the lead actress just didn't cut it. I didn't mind Cara Delevingne, the main actress, but it was the guy from Chronicle. I don't know his name, but he was the one for me where I was like, he just isn't selling this character for me. And then, like, I like Rihanna, but Rihanna was like pretty wasted in that movie, in my opinion. And he definitely has like some cool ideas, but they don't always work as well as I think you'd want them to. So the goal for this, just so you all know, is to complete this head today. Next time I'll be rendering it. I'm enjoying doing this head workflow because it's pretty easy. But you're able to like pretty make a pretty good um, realistic head pretty quickly. The designs are interesting, but also just like the ideas in the script are interesting. Like the one of the opening scenes is like the big market scene. I thought that idea is really cool, where they go to this big like VR markets basically, but then you're also there sort of, and I thought that was a really cool idea. That whole world that they're in, and just interesting. That's a very interesting idea that I haven't really seen many places before. So that's what I give him credit for. But I think the overall stuff, like everybody's, like you're saying, is not the most engaging thing out there. One sec, I gotta check something on the stream side. Oops. Looks like we might be having a connection issue with Twitch. Hello, Twitch. Check it in a second. All right, there we go. Hello, hello. Jono3D, hello, Jono. How you doing? Cool. All right, we're gonna keep working on this. Uh, this character is actually a character I'm going to be building into something bigger for a different project. So I'm basically working on a couple projects at once. If you're following any of the other stuff I'm working on Archetype on a separate stream. I'll show you that though, in case you've never seen this before. And I'll show you the creator that I did as well. Mr. Aragorn, hello there. Welcome. Load this one, and then we'll load this one. And then I'll load the pose for it as well. All right, so these are all kind of the projects that I'm working on. So this is the head that I'm working on right now. You can see I'm kind of doing these details. This is before and this is after. We're just going to basically polish this bad boy up until it's done today, or at least as much as we can get it. This will be part of a larger character, which I'll be eventually rolling into Archetype, which is the other series that I work on Tuesday mornings. But trying to do 12 characters in a year based on the archetypes, and it's really fun to do that, but that's a lot of work to make a character in a month. So I'm using ArtJam to build assets of that and explore the parts of the pipeline. So that's what I'm doing here, is exploring those heads. So I'm making the head. This is a character. These are hands that I did for Archetype. So if you haven't seen that before, this large character here, this sort of robotic character creator. That's the creator is the name of the character. You can kind of check that out here as well. So that was that character, and this is what those final images looked like. And I rendered those in Marmoset, which is pretty fun, actually. Using 3D Scan Store again. So that was some of what this character, this human character, was just a scan from their store post and then lit and put in the scene. And I used Marmoset for that, which was pretty cool. First time really using Marmoset in like a more advanced way, but I actually quite enjoyed it. So that's that one. And this is, again, a series of 12, so this was the first one. The next one that I'm working on is this character, which is like a really large golem, basically. And this is the caregiver, which is a set. There's 12 archetypes, and this is the second one that I'm working on. So the caregiver, and this is like the size of a human here, down here. So you see the scale there, and that's what we have up here. And then I'll show you the pose for that. So I just, in the last episode, was blocking out some poses. It's loading now. So you'll see that it's just basically like some huge golem that's kind of, I thought I did different, made some adjustments to this, but apparently I didn't. Kind of caring for these people. So that will be the one that I continue on. And this head is going to eventually be one of those characters as well, one of those 12, but sort of an unnamed one right now. So right now, just trying to work on this pipeline. I like working on all different types of characters, whether it's human characters or creature characters or robot characters, anything like that. I like to kind of do a little bit of everything. So I find bouncing back and forth from different styles to be probably one of my favorite parts of the job. Looks like we just posted in our chat. You can check out Archetype there if you're interested in that. And you know, we can actually pull in a texture. So these scans come with textures. I'll pull in just a generic one, and maybe we'll turn it into polypaint. Let's try texturing today. That's a little bit. We'll use it as like a guideline too. So I'm going to go into texture, import. I'm going to go into my assets here, my asset library, 3D Scan Store heads. You see it has a bunch of heads. I'm going to use Malo 6 as a starting point. Textures, you can see what it comes with. This is the diffuse map. I'll probably change this color, so we'll bring that in. It's pretty big textures. Definitely got some, yeah, the Star Trek Romulan Vulcan eyebrow going on is definitely a thing. So now that I have it, I get click here, click it, flip it. Take a second. Then I scroll it down on the right, go to texture map, and I select that. And there we go. Now it looks super Romulan. Let's like go to a skin shade or something. So now it looks actually incredibly Romulan because of the baldness, I think. I don't know what it is. So there's a bunch of these that I could pick to try. So I'm going to try another 2 maybe. Let's just import a couple more. Textures. Let's do head 05, textures, JPEG. Well, that guy's much older. We'll pass on that. That means he'll have a lot of wrinkles in his scan. So I'm going to skip over that. Flip. I don't want it to import that. Okay. This is actually kind of cool. I like this one. Also using the skin shade material, these matte caps and stuff will tend to be not the best once you start to getting into texturing, especially if you want to bring it into another program, just because it's going to be kind of hard to see what you're actually bringing in because it's going to have a natural tint and shading to it. So I'm going to look for a feature that I can't remember where it is. ZBrush poly painting modes. There's ZBrush poly painting modes. I'm going to play with those in a sec. What I'm going to do real quick though is go to my highest level subdivision. I think I have layers on. Yeah, I do. And I'm going to go to layer. This should be my sculpting layer, so you'll see that when I turn this off and on, certain things will happen to the sculpt. I'm going to make sure I'm recording. And I'm going to go to Polypaint over here. I'm going to do Polypaint from texture. So it's going to take the texture map that I'm using, and it's going to create Polypaint out of it. The RGB mode is off. All right, let's try again. That did nothing. Why did that do nothing? Let's try again. Texture map. Texture map on. Polypaint from texture. All right, I think it's on now. Aha, and there we go. Now it's there. So basically that high-res texture map is here now, which is cool. And I'm going to look for a mode. I'm going to look for Polypaint modes, which is a cool thing. What I can do now is I can probably turn this texture map off. I don't need that. That means I also, when I save the tool, which I'll do here, it will automatically, if you have the texture loaded into your mesh, it will go ahead and like keep it there, which I don't really want at all. Villain from Blade 2, mostly the jaw. Yeah, we definitely were talking about the Reapers last time with this. So I can also go here and you'll see what that texture looks like. So there's some stuff I would want to clean up here, which we'll work on here in a sec. Go back to our skin shade. Nice thing about skin shade or using those materials is you can actually adjust the light on it. So I can make it a little harsher on one side or a little brighter on one side to see how it's looking. And then if you do a render, it'll have a better shadows that accurately reflect that, which is kind of nice. So maybe we'll set up our render real quick too. VPR shadow. I'm going to make the angle a little broader, probably 20. We'll start with that. See what that looks like. What that does is it basically makes the actual shadow get softer. So you can see how down at this part it becomes much softer as compared to, I'll just toss it over here. If this was at 0, I'll do that render again and you'll see how this will be a perfectly harsh line. So I'm going to turn up the angle. We'll say, let's make it like 40 so you can see it more extreme. Hit BPR. You'll see how it'll now have a much softer shadow, but it kind of has this weird gradation in it where you can see that. That's because this is the rays, meaning it's casting 12 different lights. So it's 12 different lights at 40-degree angle. And so what you're actually seeing is those 12 different lights casting their shadow. So if you want that to go away, all you need to do is pump this up. So I'll put it to like 60. And now when I hit this, it'll take a little bit longer because it's doing 60 rays versus 12, but you'll see that that'll get a lot softer and more natural. So if I want to get like a much harsher, or if we want to do like a backlight, And now it starts to feel a bit more natural. It's also good for light tests and checking your shadows and checking your forms. The angle might be a little broad for this. You see how soft it's really getting in here. So I'll say like 30. And then that means I can lower this to 40, and that'll just make it faster. Cool. All right, now I'm looking for the BPR, not the BPR, excuse me, the polypaint modes. So let's find that. I'm going to make my polypaint brush, which is basically the standard brush with RGB on, a spray in the type, the color set very low, and then an alpha set to alpha 23. What this basically does is it makes I have to make a new layer for this, I guess. We'll make this the painting layer. Paint. That makes it this type of a brush, which kind of is like a spattery airbrush. And if I want that to be lighter, I turn down the RGB intensity so I can add or slowly bring in color. So this is what I'll end up using for a lot of this painting. But there are some other features, and we're going to go into our, I want to say it's in alpha or brush, so we're going to have to dig through this stuff real quick. Brush. Let's toss brush over here. Alpha and texture feels right. Polypaint mode. Here we go. If you hold down Control on anything in ZBrush, it will tell you how to, or what it does, right? So it tells me that when max size to alpha, whatever, there's this polypaint mode. What you read, it says how polypainting will be applied. There are 5 modes, which include standard, colorize, multiply, lighten, and darken, which is basically different types of Photoshop layers, actions or ways you can do that. So 1, it's telling us right now that number 1, it goes in order. 1 is standard, 2 is colorize, 3 is multiply, 4 is lighten, and 5 is darken. So when you have a really great texture like this, what you don't want to do is you don't want to come in and say, okay, here's this great warm color. I'm going to paint it really heavily on the model, right? Because what that actually does, as we'll see, is going to completely obliterate all of the detail. So I don't want that to happen. So how do we utilize polypainting but also utilize scans? That's the question. So with the polypaint mode, can use colorize. So if I go to polypaint mode 2 and now I paint, you'll see that it's going to change the way that it interacts with the model in some areas. There's some weirdness going on here, which should not be happening. I have a feeling, by the way, that this is a layer-related issue. Because I've seen layers cause issues before with polypainting. So we're going to do a quick test. We're going to bake all our layers. It doesn't have the texture map on it now, does it? See? There's something that goes on with layers in polypaint. This is why I try to avoid layers at all costs. Alright, we're going to do a duplicate version of this and we'll see how it works. Let's just clone this tool. So we're working on this alone. We're going to bring back in that texture really fast. We're going to bake all our layers before we do anything. Texture map, bring in this one. Great, we know that's the one that we want. We're going to go polypaint from texture. Cool. The texture map is now off, so I can say that there's nothing here, which means this is now polypaint information that I can paint on top of. Notice that when I go to polypaint mode 1, we'll even go to our brush settings and turn it like this. We'll even actually just change it so it's a very simple, straight up airbrush. Right? This is what normal polypaint works like. When you go to polypaint mode 2, again we have that red. You see that it's just colorizing the poly paint. That's the one thing that I was trying to do, but because the layers are not wanting to play, it's giving us some issues. What you can do with this is, let's pick any color. So we'll choose like we were talking about Star Trek, so let's make a Star Trek alien very, very quickly. You take a scan of a person, you sculpt a little bit on it, and then voila, you have a blue alien. And then you can come in here and paint with any other color you want. This is a pretty unknown feature. Most people don't realize that this is a thing in ZBrush, so it's actually pretty cool. I wouldn't go as heavy-handed as I did. I'll show you what I would actually do. Let me call JJ. So I would come in with like probably that brush that I was making. Turn up the color just slightly. What this does is it gives a variation in the color. And I would say, like, let's get some, we'll do a purple. Turn down the RGB intensity. And now I can bring in, keep that base color there, because I don't want to completely lose it all. See, now you can get really, really great detail from the texture that you had, and all you have to really do is paint color, the actual color that you want to turn into. There's obviously a lot we can do with this. The other thing that you can do that's really cool with this is, let's say you wanted, I think we've joked with this before, but like if you wanted to pull a Furiosa or some sort of a specific style of a character, right, you can do the same thing, or create some sort of a tattoo incredibly quickly by just painting it in. So a lot of people kind of they talk shit about ZBrush's poly paint because it's it's not painting on UVs or whatever, but the reality is it's actually really powerful. We're just making up something right now just to kind of demonstrate it, but this is now the Ultimate Warrior's makeup. But it's perfect. It's exactly what you need as far as like being able to paint and add color to something very, very easily, but not something that's necessarily commonly used in the program. But it's just right here. And then there's other features. So 3 is going to be multiply. So it's only going to darken the image, but it will still keep it. So that means if I paint with white, I'm assuming if I paint with white, it doesn't really do very much. Right? If I paint with black, it'll be completely black. But if you paint with lighter materials, so let's try this red again. Let's turn it to a green. We're just going to make up a clown at this point. It shouldn't. It looks like it's still kind of doing that. Let's see what these other modes do. So for some reason, black is doing nothing. That's probably because it's lightened. So here you can see I have an orange material, but because I'm painting in lighten, it's not able to lighten something that's already lightened. So this paint is all on the same material, but if I can come in here and I'll choose something super bright, right? And then I come back in here and I choose something darker, it can't paint over anything that's darker, or sorry, that's lighter. So there's a lot of little techniques in poly paint that you can use to kind of play around with that. And then the last one is darken. Darken should work the opposite. So let's do like a darker line. Okay, let's do a brighter line. You see I'm painting with the white and nothing's really happening here. Because it's only really allowed to darken the image, but it can't add anything darker. So the same kind of thing. It's just using dark versus light. And this is basically just like any Photoshop layer, if you've ever used those in Photoshop, where you can choose your blending modes. This is doing the same kind of thing. So you can create really great poly paint effects using poly paint. We're using really great texture effects using existing textures using poly paint. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to do this as a projection, I think, which is fine because it's not letting me, what's the right word? Paint on it in the layered file. So my head sculpt, which is this one and this one, have layers on them. This is my issue right now. So if I turn this on and I paint, it works, but I need to re-put that texture map on. So let's try this. Texture here. Great. Let's do poly paint from texture while this layer is recording. Great. It's gone. Let's turn the layer off. Texture on. Poly paint from texture. It says it's working. Let's turn it off. Let's record the layer. It's gone. Turn the texture back on. It's there. Poly paint from texture. It's gone. So this is the problem with the layers, is that they don't really do what you want them to do. They don't function the way you think they should function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one file that I'm going to use to explore the color, one mesh that I'm going to use to explore the color options, and one mesh that I'm going to use to do all my painting on it. So I'm actually just going to delete this layer because I don't need it. Can show everything else. And I'll switch to a matte cap that's more reasonable so we're not blinding everybody with that bright matte cap. And you can see how this layer is about me sculpting details. This one and this one. I'll show you what all these do and why I'm wanting to work on it. This is the sculpt before I did anything. So I didn't add any pore level details to the sculpt at all. It's pretty loose. Its forms still need to be resolved quite a bit, which is what we're working on today. But I have two displacement maps that I put in here. So the first one looks like this, and then the second one looks like this. And I'm putting them both on at the same time. So we get this kind of extra heavy skin texture. I could pick only one, or I could pick only the other. I put them both on there, and I've morphed out sections of them that I didn't like. So that's where you're going to see some of these lines are going to disappear on the head. So I'll turn this one on. You'll see those lines will disappear. Also, these lines kind of here in the corner of the mouth or the nose. Pretty harsh from one of these. This one had really harsh wrinkles there, which I didn't like, so I morphed those out. And that's what this layer corrects. And then this layer is me doing all my sculpting adjustments. So I kind of need to keep all this stuff so that it doesn't break. And what I'm going to do is probably sculpt. We got an hour and 20 left in the screen. Hour 20 left in the stream. I'm going to sculpt for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then I'm going to explore some color. And then I'll duplicate the mesh. Once I duplicate the mesh, what I'm going to do is use the other one. I'm going to bake all the layers. I'm going to make it so that it doesn't need to have anything there, and that way I can work on it. All right, let's put this mode on. Let's also get our screen recorder going. They do have some funky UI choices, right? Salmon, you definitely agree. Or I definitely agree. I don't understand why it's there. That's pretty odd, but it is there. So just I don't get it either. All right. This is for when I do recap videos and stuff. You'll eventually see this stuff sped up at almost 10 to 20 times. We're going to keep working on this head. For 20 minutes. All right, what are we going to do? What's our goal? I want to push the design a little bit further. I want to make it feel more natural, which I've already kind of done. From here. That's not it. Something's wrong. Which one was I actually sculpting on? Because I like some of this stuff more than this one. I'm missing things. Oh, it's because the layer's not on. There we go. All right, so working on this. I want to push the design a little bit further. I want to have some reasons for some of these lines. You're surprised at how natural it looks. It's not jarring at all. That's good. Yeah, that's the goal. It's usually because, you know, this is scans off of a person, right? So I used a scan, I used reference of a person, and it kind of is just one of those things where, you know, I'm using the best reference and stuff I can, and I think that helps quite a bit. Something I also start to do when I get into this type of work. Oh, I'm sculpting on the wrong one again. Something I also like to do is try to avoid really harsh lines. Like I don't mind it if it's like intentional, meaning like this. I'm going to create some sort of a line like this that's going to be a design element, right? Maybe it'll go into some pattern or thing. That's fine, and that's all well and good. But if it's in the body, I try to avoid, and if I see them, I try to break them up. Really harsh lines. I feel like I should be on this side. Actually, I'll ask the chat. Do you guys like this layout more? Or do you like the other layout where it's more a full screen and you can see ZBrush? Like this one. Do you have a preference? Full screen or half? I'm not offended if you don't want to see me. I just kind of want to know what everybody prefers. Can always switch it up too. Nuclear says half. You vote Josh on the left. All right. Oh, I'm not sculpting in symmetry. That's okay. Both are good. You have different use cases, like half for intros. All right, thank you. If anybody else has an opinion, feel free to introduce it. This little nose area right here, it's feeling weird. I think it's because there is so much detail, like in areas like this, and then this area has almost nothing. So I'm going to try to just introduce a little bit more. There's some fun ways you can do this to use the existing sculpt, so I'll show you that really quick. Well, all you really got to do is you come under here on the right hand side, you go to masking, turn this texture off. Masking, mask by cavity. Make sure your blur is very low and your intensity is high. You can see this captures with all this detail on it. It's going to capture a ton of detail. I'm going to hit Control H to hide that. And I can use the move brush. You're going to see how it's basically going to pull out sections. This is obviously not what we want, but we can go into our standard brush or our inflate brush or anything. I like to use inflate sometimes, but it can create some weird intersections. But if you turn the standard brush way, way, way down, like 2, 3, 4, 5, and brush over the object, even that's too high. Oh, that's because I'm on the wrong one. You can get a little bit of detail in there. And that's just going to make it, it's going to enhance what's there, meaning it's not necessarily going to add wrinkles or create elements if it wasn't there. But it is a nice way to just dial in a little bit more detail. You can also smooth while this is on. And that'll get a little bit more detail in those areas, which is kind of nice. Turn this back up. We probably should really push this. Mask by features, yes. Salmon damage, yeah. Damon's an amazing teacher, from what I hear. I've never taken his class, but I see the results on it, or from it. So we're going to push that Blade 2 Reaper vibe a little more. Go down in subdivisions. I'm going to inflate this. It's really low. I turned it way down, so I got to turn it up again. Just pushing the detail a little bit further. I also don't do much of my detail sculpting at higher levels, which I think helps not mess with the details, which is obviously, I guess, makes sense, but I think it helps quite a bit with it feeling a little bit more natural because you're making those adjustments on kind of like a more macro scale than you are like a micro scale. Let's get in there with this eyelid. You see, it's kind of there already. All right, let's keep picking at some details. I definitely recommend like finding a displacement map or a couple that work and then using them as like a guide to add new wrinkles or to sculpt new wrinkles or to, like for example, this one has like a little wrinkle right here that was kind of part of it. So I just kind of come in here and just can use that as like a starting point rather than going into it and saying, oh, there's, you know, a bunch of cool stuff here, but I'm going to make my own wrinkle here. I think that's part of the thing that helps it feel a little bit more true. Sometimes what I've done with the damn standard brush, which is one of my favorites, is also go in here and I'll make the focal shift really small. So whereas it would be this, I can kind of now be a little tighter. So it's more like a real carving brush. And then turn that way down like at 15, 20. And you can use this, and I'll show you, I'll turn it up quite a bit so you see what I'm actually doing. But I'm basically just going to do this. That's a ZBrush bug. Where I'm basically going to do this across the surface, but with a really, really, really low intensity. So at like 10, you can still kind of see what it's doing. But if I come over here to where I know there would be wrinkles, I'll start kind of making those shapes, almost like you're using a rake brush or something like that. And just picking at those forms, going with the forms, and then also going the opposite direction of the forms. And this will help break up the surface. So sometimes on the displaced stuff, on an area that doesn't have, you know, too much information, it can look like a flat piece of leather. So I'm trying to add a little bit dimension to that. I'm also varying my what's this called? Draw size? A lot. I think that's a thing that people don't notice or don't think to do, especially when they're starting out, is you should vary your draw size quite a bit, or at least, ZBrush has a dynamic setting now, but they didn't used to have the dynamic setting, and I think it's probably hurt a lot of people because they don't really know what it does. But basically what it does is it makes it so that your draw size is always the same. So like, for example, if I turn this way up and I make a mark, make it smaller, it's this wide. And then if I zoom in, it's still that wide. And that's kind of how Photoshop works, right? That's like what Photoshop does. It's based on a pixel. Your brush is based on a pixel size. But here, if you turn off dynamic, what it does is this will be the size here. Then if I zoom in, it'll be this size. And then if I zoom in, it'll be this size. And so you'll see that there's now all of a sudden like a natural change in the line weight, basically of what the size of those brushes are. And the reason that I feel like sometimes turning off dynamic or playing with your brush size is important is, let's say I'm sculpting wrinkles, so I'm going to sculpt a wrinkle, and this is kind of what they look like. And after a while, they do all start to look pretty fake because it's all the same size, regardless of how accurate or great my line work is or strokes are. They're all going to kind of feel odd because it's the same size. Whereas if I come in with a couple that are really big and then make some smaller ones, I'm just adjusting my brush size for this, you can start to see having some of these really tiny ones and having some of these really big ones is really kind of the important part to make something feel a little bit more natural. It's about varying up the shape of the thing. Looks like my stream is having issues. Looks like it's trying to reconnect. Are we back yet? We should be back. All right. No problem on YouTube, at least. Cool. We might just be having an issue on Twitch. I see it says my internet is pretty low, so unfortunately we're having some weird stuff going on today. Anyways, that's the way I like to vary things up, and I think that helps create a more natural look. So even here, what I had was coming along. It was looking pretty good, but you can start to see I'm pushing it a little further, not just in the lines, like that make up the design, but also the surfaces start to get more complex as well, which I think helps quite a bit. Oh, my move brush, that's what I messed up my move brush. It was at like 2%. Let's just mess with this face. Symmetry's great. I love it. But at a certain point, you do need to break it. When you're sculpting without symmetry at a certain point, Like I've been doing all this detail work without symmetry. You just have to take a jump. Do I prefer curve by pin off? Curve by pin off. Not entirely sure what you mean. AccuCurve? Is that what you're saying? Not quite sure what your question was. Oh, the size sensitivity. Yeah, I've never used the size sensitivity. I think that's kind of like the pin pressure in Photoshop that you can do. Again, it's not really anything I've ever done. I just don't really know what I would use it for. I could try it, but no, I'm sure there's a thing. I just haven't really used it. Do you do the skin texture manually or use the map? Sorry, you just joined the stream. No worries, Emmanuel. This is a base mesh that I started from a 3D scan store base mesh. They have a bunch of maps and texture maps and all that fun stuff that you can download from them if you purchase a couple heads. So I purchased a couple heads from them and used the displacement maps to get the skin texture. So if we come in here, I'll show you really quickly. This is the mesh that I actually sculpted. This is with the first displacement map. This is with the second displacement map. This is with me making a morph to correct it. And then this is me doing a sculpt on top of that. And then I guess I can probably just load it, right? What the mesh itself looks like. Asset library. It looks like this. So I sculpted from, it was this one or probably this one. From this to this. All right, so we're almost at that time of where I wanted to start playing with texture, so we'll doing that in a second. Just trying to push this a little bit further to have a little bit more to play with. Yeah, no problem. Happy to explain. Happy to help. All right. I could keep going with this, and I probably will, but I'm going to do that all off stream. At this point, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm going to duplicate this in a second, kill all the layers, add that texture, so we can explore some of that color. All right, let's go ahead and save. I'm going to duplicate, hide this one, bake all the layers. Textures back. Weird. And is it as a texture? It is not. It is polypaint. So we'll switch to the skin shader. We're going to go back into brush. We're going to go to polypaint mode 2. Turn down our RGB quite a bit. And we'll pick a color. I'll start picking colors. You can also, this mode is global. So I can come in here and still use color fill object. Or it should be. Oh, I thought it was global. Never mind, I lied. We could do this though. To just like be like, do we want it to be green? No, we do not, but it's a good starting point. So I'm kind of doing is I'm just looking for a base color that I think would be interesting. So very much like Star Trek, like is this a blue person, a red person, a green person, all that fun stuff. Part of me wants to go like, you can also, I think you can also do, yeah, black and white basically. So if you wanted to just have a black and white base to start from, you could do that too. Part of me likes what I just did there with that gray, almost like texture. I kind of want it to feel somewhat dead. I want it to feel that, you know, we did this before last stream, but like jokingly, just like Voldemorting this character is pretty easy. And I think if we went like this, you would probably see what I'm getting at real quick. Obviously, some little adjustments in here needing to have happened, but I think the grayness of that character is something that I like. So I'm going to experiment with that a little bit. But I want to do it in a way that feels more like it's the actual character. So I can come in here. I don't want it to be gray. I probably want it to be green gray. As a starting point. And I'm going to use that speckly brush that I was making before. And anywhere where there's going to be like bone protrusion, I'm going to start there. We're going to kind of see how this goes. Maybe we'll go to like a yellow. So I'm going to keep this. I'm going to store it as a background color here. And then we'll Actually, I'm going to color pick it so I have it twice. And then instead of choosing a completely different color, I'm going to choose something within the same value range, but a different hue. And the way I do that is just by not moving this, by only selecting the outside. So it means it takes the exact same saturation level, and it's the exact same value, meaning black to white, but it's just a different hue. And then I can paint that in, and it will feel similar. It's just going to shift the color temperature of it. Now this stuff is going to be harder to fix. I actually need to come in properly in painting that, but we'll do that in a bit. We'll do some of this warmth. And maybe some purple in the eye area. Go back into here, get some of that purple. Let's make it a little brighter, a little more saturated, and see what that feels like. A little intense. I don't really want it to feel like makeup too much, but I also don't want it to be completely invisible. So it's kind of a weird balance between that. Like now it looks like he's wearing under eye shadow, which isn't really the goal. But notice that I also have RGB intensity down, so when I'm pushing it, I really have to push hard to get that to come through. And do like a light speckle of this blue all over everything. The nice thing is I can always come back in with the original texture because I have it. So I'm not like worried about losing it. I would rather go more vibrant and more colorful because I can push it back later. And one of the ways I can also do that is just by reprojecting the texture or putting the texture back on. Meaning if I came in here, I think this will work. I'm going to double check. Texture map, turn it back on. It should overwrite what we have. So this is what we had, and now what we have. And if I have the texture on and I go poly paint, let's check this real quick. Poly paint from texture. If RGB intensity is down, let's see what happens. Yeah, that's what I thought. So it barely did it. If I put it at 100, poly paint from texture, it will look like nothing happened. Right? Now I'm undoing. If I put RGB intensity at nothing, it will look like I'll push the button, but it'll go back to what it was. See? Turn it up. All right, we'll put it at 1. It'll look like I didn't do anything. So what this means is I can basically come back in if I need to, have this texture in here, and flood it with the original texture information. Depending on how much I want to go with that is the question. But you can see I can kind of bring in that original skin tone back, and I think that helps it feel, you know, like as what we had here. Just isn't bad. It's not far off. But if I ever feel like I need a little bit more of that original skin tone, I can do that. either in one part of the model or all of the model. Doesn't really matter. So let's get some of this like greenish. Turn this up to 30-ish. Try to see what we could do. And turn this way up. I mean, even this is starting to look kind of nice with just the whole kind of dead quality to it. That was kind of the goal. This is a very traditional airbrush style of texturing. Realized that was very high, and that's why I was looking weird. Looking good. Thank you very much, George. I feel like I lost something, so I'm going to undo a bunch. This might crash, but we'll see. When you drag the undo slider, sometimes it can have mixed results as far as how good that does. Because it has to remember basically every undo that you're going to go over. And I didn't think about the fact that I was at a trying to basically see multiple 3 million polygon meshes at a time. Let's turn this way down and bring back some of that original color. There we go. Come back in. Get some of that. Sometimes you can also come in here with different types of meshes or things. So this one has like kind of a veiny texture to it. If I turn it up, you'll see it has this quality, like a spider-like membrane quality to it. So you can use this. This is getting into very Voldemort territory, but like doing this kind of thing. So that there's sort of this membrane breaking down of the surface quality you can do pretty easily. And again, we're poly painting with the poly paint modes right now. So you can see that actually happening right there. Now that I'm using a spray, I could switch to drag rectangle if I wanted to be more precise and if this was like a shape that I wanted. So if I want to bring in some veins or something into these areas here, this is a nice way to do that. One of the things you want to do when you're doing textures for characters like this is you don't want them to get muddy. So what I mean by that, I'll show you in 1 second. I'm going to do one quick adjustment. Just basically get very close to black, if not black, and I'm going to fill this nostril. It isn't actually completely black in there, but it will make it so that when you look like from an angle, that it feels like it's in shadow. Versus like you're looking up a doll's nose. It'll help quite a bit. What I meant by the textures not getting muddy is you basically want to use things that won't smooth or blur your colors together. And the way you can check that is you can go into your flat skin shade. Oh, I need my... Why is this on? Why is that material on? All right, let's fill it with just M, color, fill RGB. Don't know why we have that material. Why are you going back to the red? We're getting something weird, everybody. We're getting something weird. What happens when we get weird things? We save. We save. All right, saving this. So I'm happy with where this is going. I wanted to show you the texture stuff, which I'll do in just a second. But you typically don't want to use like a really soft airbrush all that often because it will blur the colors together. So you kind of want to do what's known as optical mixing of colors. I'm going to do a quick initialize of ZBrush. And then I'll reload the tool in a second and you'll be able to see that. So I'm going to pop over to another view so we can watch this happen. As you see, it's kind of loading and taking a second. I probably should have and will maybe just close the program because it is taking a long time. So we'll just open that up again. But yeah, what you want to do is try to use dots, like almost like stippled, or lines or hatchwork or something like that. Basically, you want to try to find a way to make it so that when you are doing your texturing, especially if you're poly painting it, that it's not mixing it, right? It's not combining colors into a blurry color, and I'll show you that really quickly. Okay, does this work now? Aha! Great. All right, so most of the time you're going to be looking at it like this, right? And what that does is this is a really great texture to be looking at something with. It's awesome. But when you look at what the actual texture map it is, you go to flat color. And you'll see if you zoom in super tight, it's all these different little pixels of different quality, meaning different color, different hue, different saturation, all that fun stuff. And what you can do on accident, I'll do it right here, is I'll hold down Shift and I'll turn off Z Add. Whenever you, by default, smooth in ZBrush, RGB is turned on. I'll do it kind of over this mole and this wrinkle, and what you'll notice is when I hold down Shift, it's smoothing, but it's smoothing not just the surface, it's smoothing the actual color information on the pixels together. And when I zoom out, you'll see what that does, right? And if I turn it back to a skin shaded, at first you're not really going to notice it. Actually, that's because I smoothed the surface. At first you might not notice it, right? So now I'm just smoothing that color. But you'll see that this is what the actual color looks like. So the difference of what a model looks like with a texture like this, where it's a lot of information versus a blurred piece of information, doesn't appear at first to be all that different. But you can tell there's definitely a big quality difference from here to here. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to do that. You don't want to smooth it, right? That's what it was before. And that's what it is after. So it's a small difference, but when you do it on a whole model, which, fuck it, let's do it. You lose a lot of information. It's not just all these little moles that you probably see. If we turn it to this, you'll see how much muddier and simpler this texture gets. It's like all that information is gone. From this to this, just by accidentally smoothing in ZBrush. So the one thing that I tell people if they're doing polypaint is turn off RGB when you're smoothing. You don't need it. Smoothing is just for sculpting. So that's the first thing. Second is when you're doing colors. If you want to add a little bit of red, you want to add a little bit of blue, add some greens, whatever colors you actually want to add, don't use an airbrush. So a round airbrush will give you the effect of this. So we'll make an airbrush color. We'll pick something. We'll say it's going to be bright green, right? A green airbrush will do this. This is exactly what I was saying. Now, obviously, it will give you a good look of a bright green line if that's what you're going for. Cool. But if you wanted to add like to make it look like it was part of the mesh, you could either use the polypaint mode like I was showing you before, or you can use what I'm going to show you now, which is you go into here, you go to spray, you turn down the color a little bit. I'll show you why in a sec. And you turn a mesh or a alpha like this. And when you spray, this is what the color does. Right now you see it's choosing all these different variations of green. So under stroke color, that is the difference of the contrast. So if I go up, each one's going to have a lot of contrast. And if I go down on this, it's going to have zero contrast. It'll only spray one color. So what you want to do is you go in here and turn the color very slightly up, if at all. That gives it a little bit of variation so that it's getting difference in the color you're using. And then second, you want to turn your RGB intensity way, 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 way down. It's a little too far. We'll say 25. And that, I can still dial in the amount or color that I want. Right, I can get that pop of green, but when I go to what the actual texture is, you see that it still has all of this different information in there, and that's really the important part. Now, I'm doing it right now more as like an example, right? But let's say I wanted to add in these veins in the head, right? So I can use this spray, which is going to do an effect kind of like this, if it was turned all the way up. Right, that's what I'm going to be spraying. But I'm going to turn that way, 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 way down just by turning the RGB intensity probably to 40 and doing that. And what that does is it brings in a nice little bit of green into the sculpt, and it does add the veiny texture and pattern that I want in the area that I want. And so we get the green, we get the veins, but it's not smoothing it. Right, it's not destroying the texture. It's just giving us little bits of it. So this is the way that I really like to work. There's a couple other alphas that I've used that are basically like similar to this one or similar to this one, but they're more spaced out. Is kind of what I like to use them as. But this is kind of a nice way to do that. I don't want all that green, but it does add a kind of a nice quality to it where there's a little bit more color information. Sometimes I remember early in my career looking at getting a lot of feedback from people and them saying that my textures were just a little dull or muddy, and I didn't really know what that meant. Usually I honestly didn't know what that meant, and so I would try to do more, whatever more went. How do I make a texture not look muddy, I guess was the question I was asking myself. And this was kind of what I learned as to how to avoid that. Now what's cool about this is I can come into any area and say, I want this to feel warmer. Okay, well, I'll take a bright, bright red, turn down the RGB intensity. We'll say I want the eyes to feel a little bit warmer. And just circle them once or twice. And it's not going to override everything there, but because it's stippling it, essentially, right, it's going to bring in these veins and this stuff in here in a more natural way. So you can actually see, like right here, where that red is coming in, but it feels more like it's being overlaid rather than like completely destroying what's on the surface. So there's a bunch of different ways you could do this. You can use the texture modes, the colorize one. The colorize one doesn't change the value very much, so that's what you need to be conscious of if that's what you're looking for. Other things we can do, I'll show you really quickly. We just talked about how you could use mask by cavity or mask by something, mask by feature, basically. So do you want to do a border, creases? How do you want to mask? All this stuff. If we mask by cavity, this is a really great way. Right now it's masking the cavities. So just show you real fast. Hit Control H. Turn this up quite a bit. Right, you'll see what it's painting when I paint. Right now it's not painting the cavities because I need to invert the mask, so I'm going to invert the mask and I'm going to paint that. You'll see now all the little crevices are getting bright, bright red. That isn't really what I want here, but I'm going to pick a color that feels more natural, and then I'm going to go a little darker, and maybe a little more saturated, and maybe a little warmer. And this is how you can get some nice bits of detail into a texture map if you want to derive it off of the information that's on your map. It's a little high on the RGB intensity for me. It's going to look like I'm doing nothing, but you can kind of see back and forth what's happening there. And if I go to the flat color, you'll see that even further where it's adding more texture information there. You don't have to go crazy on this, but this can be great for doing beards. Like let's say we want to paint it. There's a crazy beard in here. Turn it up just for demonstration's sake. Not the most clean beard I've ever painted, but you kind of get the idea. It's going to work really great for that type of stuff. Somebody's got a shaved head. You're going to give them a hairline. Kind of start getting in there with this stuff. So, nice way to add extra details to your sculpts. I'm going to do that near the end, I think. And if I don't want to keep all the stuff I just used as a demo, but what you can also do, like these are great areas to do it in. Let's mask by cavity again. See how this is really like juicy. I'm going to invert that. I'm going to blur it a little bit this time. Hide my mask. And I'm going to pick this like purple color. Jason Statham of another multiverse. Absolutely. And I'm going to put in, I'm going to use that speckle brush, not the veiny brush. So now all of these wrinkles that are on the neck have both around it and inside it a little bit of that texture. I'm going to invert the mask, Control H to hide the mask, paint the tops of it. Can maybe blur the mask. So now I can do a little bit of both. But this is a nice way to just kind of add details, colors and details to something so it doesn't feel too crispy, too crunchy. But there should be some lines now that have that dark purple in there. And sometimes I'll just paint like with the flat shaded on, just to see what I'm actually getting. Oh, it looks like I should undo a lot more because I have this demo beard still. So I'll undo all this stuff I just did. There it is. But you can kind of see how that went away. So what I can do to fix some of this other stuff is we need to paint without any of this. So I can still use the same brush that I'm using. I'm just going to color pick certain parts. So there's this part of the mesh with the texture that it had isn't really working. So I'm just going to color pick, turn RGB up pretty high, hit C to color pick from the model. You'll see over here it's choosing that color. And then I can just brush it in. So on this side, same thing. Color pick this lighter area. Using that speckly brush. Just being a little bit more aggressive with it. The face is also kind of getting flat in its color. That's somewhat normal. But you can come in and just like maybe try to bring a little bit more brightness to something. So turn down the RGB. Choose like a color that you know is in the model. Like here, pick it a little bit brighter, a little bit more saturated. And just try to push parts of it so it doesn't get so dark. Sometimes when you're layering stuff, it's hard to see what you're getting. It's a nice bright light. So I don't know if this is what our texture would actually be looking like. This is the flat shaded here. There we go. It's a lot easier to see. What am I creating this for? Good question. I'm creating this for a series of characters that I'm making on another stream, but I'm making some of the parts in them and working out some of the workflows on this stream. So Art Jam is where I'm kind of exploring workflows and ideas and, you know, just kind of getting things moving, basically, trying things. And then Archetype is the other stream that I do on Tuesday mornings where I create different characters based off of a theme. So I'm trying out making more realistic heads for humans or humanoids. I did one a couple weeks ago, which is kind of just a test, but I've downloaded some stuff from 3D Scan Store to play around with. It's working pretty well. So far, I'm pretty happy with it. Watched. Oh, what am I creating this for? It's not for a movie or a game or anything specifically. It's just for myself. Watching Arcane on Netflix? Yes, absolutely. It's pretty gorgeous. Links. Another stream. It'll be on this exact channel. It's on this channel. You can also check out our YouTube page. I'll show you real quick, just 'cause it's easy. Gnomon. We'll do it over here. Gnomon YouTube. So if you go to the Gnomon YouTube channel, you'll see a bunch of stuff. If you go to scroll down right here, you'll see events and weekly streaming shows. Art Jam is what we're in right now, so we have 72 of these you can go back and watch. Archetype is the stream that I do on Tuesdays, and then we also do a Tuesday night show with Jared Kraszewski. So you'll see this was a different character called the Creator. So this is the playlist here of all these, and there's a bunch of different stuff there. So thank you for posting that in the chat. We also have our nighttime stream where they make different monsters. And then we have this stream where you can see I was making this character, which ended up looking like this. I have to watch an ad apparently. So check those out. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. Just to show before and afters, which I tend to like to do. I'll show you the head that I think I started with today. Oh boy. Just fill it with a color real quick. Texture map. Nope, no texture. You know why? Because it has layers, probably. I don't know why it has those. They're so annoying. So this is why basically what I started with today. And this is where I am now. Without the texture, you can kind of see what it looks like. It's similar, but we pushed the design a little bit today and worked on the texture of the face. I guess I do have these eyebrows and eyelashes. I don't really know if I'm going to use them. I'll make them really dark. Maybe like the same color. Color, fill object. And I'll fill the eyebrows as well. Eyebrows definitely aren't working as much as they were. But there we are. I don't think we'll do the eyebrows. One of the influential moments in your 3D modeling was seeing light diffusion through the ear in Red Dead 2. Yeah, Red Dead 2 is great. They have some really, really incredible, artwork in that game. I do feel like I need to push some of the texture as far as what these lines and stuff are doing, so maybe that's something I'll play with real quick. Get some color in here. Let's do a orange. Let's see what orange looks like. Nope. Not orange. Nope. Green will probably be the way to go. Or red. Or like a dark, dark purple. Less saturated. Already got a lot of that though. So this is where I would probably come in that brush settings, in the alpha and texture, and change polypaint mode to 2. This way when I paint, it feels more like paint rather than just recoloring the object. So maybe these can have some, I don't think I like that, but let's get a good color here, something that's working. Jason from class, what's up, Jay? Welcome to the stream. Back when you're like with a dark green. See, what's interesting is I think this light is way too bright. It's probably going to be not accurate because I'm painting black. Well, maybe not. I'm just choosing like very, very dark green. Like this is the color I'm painting, which is very dark green. And this is the color that it's resulting in. So I'm wondering if this light here is doing maybe a little bit more than I want it to. Because that should be, in theory, very dark. But I'm also painting in color mode. So that's probably what it is. Which is why it's not getting darker. I forgot I was in that mode. So if I went to 1 and painted this, it would be appropriately colored. Let's try some of this other stuff. Let's see how this goes. I'll probably end up adding a bunch of stuff here. You see I have some of these like little veins and stuff I was starting to kind of experiment with. I could kind of follow those threads. I might. I'm not entirely sure where this will go. So I got a couple weeks before I'm going to jump onto this character or another character anyways. Reminds you of the Pearl aliens from Valerian. Yeah, we were talking about Valerian earlier. Cool designs in that movie. Can't think of the last time I saw cone heads, but for some reason. There we go. Do a little last minute adjustments. I don't think I'm going to do too much more sculpting in like the displacement map level, so I'm going to try just some head adjustments here. Also now using the texture. I'm going to bounce back and forth. I'm going to reload the model that I've already saved. So this is my most recent version. This is what I had, and this is what I have now. Kind of just comparing back and forth. Turn off those things that are different just to make sure I'm looking at that same comparison. I like where this is going more. One of the things I like to do, and I recommend to other people, is to not be afraid to always tweak stuff when you think you're done. Sometimes I make things take a little bit longer, though. I think that's okay. It's a hard state to get to when you feel done. It is a hard state, yeah. Where you're like, oh, I'm done. Oh, I'm not done anymore. But it tends to be how you get to having better stuff. At least I've found that for myself. Because if you just kind of get into the mindset of like, okay, I'm going through the pipeline, you know, high-res model, texture, or whatever, high-res, low-res texture, whatever your process is. You can kind of be in this place where you're like, oh, well, I can't change that because I'm modeling now or I'm texturing now. I can't change the model. And that's not how you're going to get good work. You'll have work, and it might be good work, but it's not going to be the way you have your best work. Starting to sort of remind, not exactly, just maybe the bald and purpleness, but it was in Game of Thrones, the ones that like tried to lure Daenerys into like a tower. I remember that episode. It's like some bald dude. I think it was in the slaver city. Yeah, the one to yeah, that one. That's the one. Something about this is reminding me of that. Let's fix this lip real quick. It's not completely wrong, but it's not right either. I do kind of like what it was doing. This is more accurate. If I like that, I can come in here. Excuse me, everybody. And give it that Blade 3 look we were talking about. Sorry, not Blade 3. Not Trinity. Blade 2. If you're thinking about going on a Blade movie marathon, you can probably skip Blade Trinity. That's all I'm saying. Unless you're a huge Ryan Reynolds fan. Even then, not his best work. Not his worst work, though. Blade was hinted in the end credits of Eternals. I say more than hinted. I mean, that was the main actor's voice. Worst work. Trinity's a sleeper. Okay. I mean, I haven't watched it in a long time, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. I'm gonna save this. Worst work. What do I think Ryan Reynolds' worst work is? I gotta look at his IMDb because I don't think I can really recall his entire career. And then after we choose Ryan Reynolds' worst work, we'll be done. We'll do this. All right, let's go to his filmography. Well, first off, he's been in 116 things. Many of them seem to be Deadpool voices. Let's see. I mean, there's a lot of these that I don't know, but we'll pick ones that we do know. Just Friends was okay. He was not great in Amityville Horror. Here's Blade Trinity way down here in 2004. I mean, we could all talk about X-Men Origins Wolverine. Yeah, there you go. H the Bald. I mean, Green Lantern. Do we want to talk about Green Lantern? What is worse? The first Deadpool, meaning the first incarnation of Deadpool in Wolverine Origins, or Green Lantern? I didn't really like R.I.P.D. Look at all these Deadpool things. Deadpool and SNL. Interview with Deadpool. Life, like on the game Life. Oh, that's One Reason Space. No, that one's actually pretty good. We don't talk about X-Men Wolverine. Well, we do though. You'd rather Hannibal King over, yeah? Origins, yeah. The Origins one is pretty rough. I gotta be honest with you. Oh, this may be a hot take. This movie, Six Underground, I couldn't watch it. Did anybody see this? It's on Netflix. It's directed by Michael Bay. It came out yeah. And then into 2019. No, that's not the one where he's underground. Not Six Underground. There's another one where he's underground the whole time. I couldn't watch it. It was like so much action and nothing was really happening. He's Bruce Wayne? What? He's Bruce Wayne. Caps. I thought you were just excited that he's Bruce Wayne. I couldn't watch it. I would say, honestly, for me, Six Underground is going to be Ryan Reynolds' worst. Maybe X-Men Origins Wolverine. And then I'm probably going to go with Green Lantern. Green Lantern. We decided it, everybody. At least I decided it here. That's actually going to be the end of our stream. We're at time now. So thank you, everybody, for joining today who's been watching, or if you're watching at home way afterwards, thank you so much. If you are, please like, follow, subscribe, what other channel stream you are on right now. It helps us quite a bit. As always, if you can also, if you're watching it, give us thumbs ups, all that fun stuff. It does help the channel out quite a bit, so we would appreciate that. We have some really amazing stuff going on this coming week and the following week. We actually have a new stream starting on Friday called Voice in the Hollow. That stream is going to be watching a short film be created in Unreal 5 over the next 6 months. So we're going to be doing a I guess you'd call it a production diary, where the director and production designer Miguel Ortega and Tran Ma will be creating a short film over 6 months, and they will be there to answer your questions and also show you everything along the way, and that's all in Unreal 5. That'll be happening for 6 months. So if you want to watch a short get made, do that. Somebody's saying bad time to ask questions. It is, but you can come back the next stream. I will be back streaming on Archetype. That's from 10 a.m. to noon Pacific time on Tuesdays. And I'll be back this channel, on Art Jam, next week. So I'll be doing that again. Stay tuned, like, follow, subscribe. Also follow us on social. You'll see a bunch of different things there. If you're interested in this, you'll probably find a lot of other things that you're interested in on our channel. So check them out. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate you all being here. I will see you all next stream. Have a good day. Talk to you soon.